The 6-2 Giants take on the 1-6-1 Texans this Sunday at MetLife Stadium. I'm going to break down matchups, players to watch, injury report, and most importantly, predictions. Stay tuned. What's up, Giants fans? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, drop some comments. All the support is much appreciated by myself and the Giants Country team. Please do not forget to check out Giants Country articles, podcasts, you name it, great interviews, Giants content 24/7. Feel like I missed you guys and gals. Feel like it's been a little while. Giants fresh off the bye week, 6-2, 2 weeks to prepare, and they'll be playing the 1-6-1 Texans. And the Giants embark on the second half journey, basically playing with house money. And if you ask most people around the league, they'll tell you playing with house money sometimes the best way to play. There's no pressure. There's not many concerns. You're putting wins under your belt. You're far ahead of schedule. And when you're far ahead of schedule, cut down on some of that pressure. So Giants have a running back that's playing at an MVP level, a quarterback that's managing the mistakes, managing the game properly, not doing too much, which draws the air of some people. But at the end of the day, he's making it happen. He's 6-2. The team has 5 fourth-quarter comebacks. Again, shout out to the quarterback. Not easy, and he had a big hand in that. The defense, shout out to the defense. They haven't been amazing, but they've been opportunistic. They've made stops when they needed to. They've gotten turnovers when they needed to. And what about the multitude of injuries this team has faced? I mean, my goodness. If you were to sit down and go back to the blue-white scrimmage and write down every single injury from then to the Seattle game, you would be in awe of how many injuries this team has had. And what do? Next man up. Who's next? Who's next in the roster? Depth chart, get in there. And they win football games. So, remarkable job so far by this Giants team in the first half. New York is currently the 6th seed in the NFL. So, if the season ended today, they would be in the playoffs. But plenty of football left here in the second half. And up next for the Giants is the 1-6-1 Houston Texans. So, on paper, the Texans have struggled. They come in on a 3-game losing streak, 5 out of 6. Tie on opening day, which kind of set the tone for them, so to speak. Bottom 5 scoring offense and probably one of the worst rushing defenses you could find, giving up 180 yards rushing per game. 180. It was almost 40 yards more than the next bottom team. So really struggling, bleeding out yardage on the ground. They're led by Davis Mills, second-year quarterback who played, I won't say well last year, but made some plays. This year he has struggled, unfortunately, for them. He has an 81.2 QB rating, 10 touchdowns, 8 intercepts, struggled behind a solid offensive line. And honestly, when you look at their rushing attack, the Texans, it looks mediocre as a team, but they have a stud rookie. Dameon Pierce out of Florida is no joke. And if you watched any of Dameon Pierce's games, he is everywhere. He's breaking tackles. He's running through guys. He's running around guys. He is no joke. 4th-round pick. Looks like they got a steal in him. He's averaging 67.8 yards on 10.5 attempts, 4.6 yards per carry, 84 yards per game, and 3 touchdowns. He's really been great. Second in yards after contact. Unbelievable. 678 total yards. I didn't mean to say 7.8. Second in yards after contact. So what that means Sunday is this Giants team needs to wrap up because this guy breaks through arm tackles. And Giants have had a little bit of issue on the defense, especially their rush defense, of arm tackling. And you're not arm tackling this guy to the ground. And he's proven it. I mean, second in the NFL in yards after contact. With running backs out there like Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb. This young kid, rookie, is second. That's phenomenal. So Giants really need to be careful. And their rushing defense has not been great either. Defensively, the Texans field, like I said, the worst rush defense in the NFL. 180.6 yards per game. 5.4 yards per carry given up. And they've done it in a variety of ways. They've given it up the middle. They've given it up on the ends. They've given it up to quarterbacks. I mean, really, you name it. And this Texans defense has struggled to the maximum. Doing the prep for these games, it's been a while since I've seen a team this far into the bottom away from the next team. That's how bad it's been. when you look at it, the defense, combined with an offense that's 27th in yards per play, 28th in points scored, that's a bad combination. That's not a winning formula for success for the Houston Texans. But Giants are not in no place to walk through and look over teams. Texans did play the Eagles pretty tough when they played them a few weeks back. Still lost, but they played an undefeated Eagles team pretty much to the brink. And listen, if the Texans can get healthy here this week, still early, so final injury reports are not out, but they were missing Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins in the last game, two of their top wide receivers. If they can get them both back this week, that'll be big. And their passing game is essentially built off the running game. So they like a lot of short, quick passes. They like to get the ball to playmakers in space. What team doesn't, right? But the Texans especially will utilize that short passing game, and they do a lot of misdirections, jet sweeps, motions. Seems like in the NFL now, that's basically when you scout every offense, they utilize that. Texans a tad more than a couple other teams that I have scouted, and they're trying to make you make a mistake in space. That's basically what the Texans do, and they're good at it. And they have some playmakers in Pierce, in Cooks, in Nico Collins, and when you combine what the Texans bring to what the Giants do, I think this matchup tilts in the favor of the New York Giants by a lot. And I'll give my prediction at the end of the show. I want to know your prediction. Put it down in the comments. Giants-Texans. I'm going to run this back after the game. I'm going to give some shout-outs. We can have some laughs. I want to know your scores, your predictions for the game this Sunday. But let's think about it here, right? The Giants play the Texans. Giants play the Lions next week. And I'm not saying they're gimmies. Lions have struggled too. But the Giants are in a good spot here at 6-2 with the Texans and the Lions coming up before you get to that NFC East stretch. Now, Giants are going to be shorthanded. And I know they've been shorthanded, it seems like every single game. But before I get into total injuries, I do want to talk about the Xavier McKinney situation. I did want to touch on that. Giants have struggled with injuries for, long before Tom Coughlin took over the team and made the famous quote, "Injuries are like a cancer that spread through a team." And Giants have been victimized. They've been victimized this year. They've had, Achilles, torn ACLs, a guy, Bellinger punched in the face, and eye socket broken. But you typically don't get injured on the bye week. That's one of the things that doesn't happen. And unfortunately for the Giants, Xavier McKinney was in Cabo riding an ATV, fell off the ATV, broke some fingers on his hand, was put on the IR. Looks like he's going to be out for a while. There's really no timetable to when he's going to come back or even when he'll be ready to get back. In his interview this week, he wouldn't commit to any time of him coming back. Really unfortunate injury. I'll give my take on it. It's tough when you talk about younger players because the NFL is no joke. It's rigorous, it's constant, it's pressure, it's practice, it's training, it's playbooks, it's nonstop. So when some of these younger kids get a chance to have a week or two off, they go on vacation and they go out and they have fun. Now, do they all go on ATVs? Probably not. You've seen Andrew Thomas. Shout out to Andrew Thomas handing out turkeys in his community to the less fortunate during his bye week. Giants got a great player on and off the field with AT, number 78. But you don't know. You can't control players. Now, you try to control players by putting it in their contract, and specifically said in the contract of Xavier McKinney, no activities that could be detrimental to you playing, and ATV riding was in the contract. So now you don't know what happened on the ATV. You don't know if he fell off. He said it was sightseeing. You don't know if he fell off on his own. You don't know if he was riding. You really don't know the particulars. Probably won't know the particulars. The Giants are usually pretty tight-knit when it comes to stuff like that. And either way you slice it, it's a tough injury. Giants lose their captain. They lose their guy with the green dot on his helmet. Looks like that's going to go to Julian Love now. He's going to really have to step up. The whole secondary is going to have to step up now for Xavier McKinney. But I wouldn't put too much heat on the kid. I've seen some people out there saying, take his C away. This is ridiculous. This is an embarrassment. What it was disappointing. And you heard Brian Daboll say that. You heard Brian Daboll say that over and over. This is a disappointment. This is a disappointment. What he was careful not to say was he was disappointed in Xavier. And I think that was important because I think that said a little bit. I think what he said was, maybe this wasn't an innocent accident, but I don't think it was his fault. That could just be reading between the lines, but nothing the Giants could do now. Their captain, their stalwart, who hadn't missed a snap in his career, is out. And he might be out for the season possibly, too. There's some whispers about him being out for the rest of the season, which that's going to be tough because you had a Giants team that's already been decimated by injuries. You have a secondary that's been hurt with injuries. It looks like Aaron Robinson's not going to come back. Team came out during the bye and said he's doubtful to come back this year. Tough break for the second-year player out of UCF. He was showing some promise in his limited action. But I will end it here. As a captain on the team, you are held to a different standard. You are held in a different place. So you do need to conduct yourself in a manner that doesn't lead to injury. But we won't know unless we have the full story. So either whether you say, leave him alone, he didn't do anything wrong, or he should have his badge stripped, neither way is going to be correct because you don't know what happened. And if it was an accident and he did fall off sightseeing by accident, saying ripping his captain badge off and not being a captain is ridiculous. Or the opposite, we're saying leave him alone, the poor kid, and he was popping wheelies. So just going to leave it at that. It's a tough loss. You hope McKinney gets back healthy, invaluable piece to this Giants defense, and they're going to have to roll without him. So let's get into the rest of the Giants injury report. Trending in the right direction finally, which is nice. Neal and Bellinger obviously still out. They're a few weeks away most likely, but some good news. You have Kenny Golladay, Cordero Flott, O'Shane Ximines, all getting pretty close. Looks like Galladay's going to play. Looks like he's really close. Flott and Ximines are getting closer. They're doing a little more each day. Richie James cleared concussion protocol, which is good. Not sure what's going to happen there with the returning the punts after the 2 fumbles. You have Shane Lemieux, who's been practicing. He's about a week into his 21-day window, which is a positive. You can never have enough depth on the O-line. Giants have seen that with injuries to Lemieux, Bredesen, Neal. So depth on the O-line is crucial. So good news. Not getting some players back, getting some guys back healthy, and anything positive injury news for the Giants is a good thing. Now we'll get into the Texans injury report. Cooks did not practice. Neville, Hewitt did not practice. You have Nico Collins, Philip Dorsett, Jaleel Johan, and Damian Pierce limited. Most likely all 4 of those players are going to play, which is going to be big for the Texans because, like I said earlier in the show, they didn't have Brandon Cooks and they didn't have Nico Collins, and those are their 2 main targeted wideouts. But when you really look at things when it comes to the injury report, Giants are still missing a ton of players. This is not counting players that are on IR, like Azeez Ojulari. There's a couple players on IR for the Giants. So they will still be shorthanded. There haven't been many times the Giants have won the injury battle versus another team. But it is what it is. And this coaching staff has instilled the next man up mentality. The team has reacted. The team has played well. And one thing you see with this Giants team is resiliency. No matter what happens, if they get down in the 4th, turnovers, if they have bad penalties called against them, they never get down and never go down on themselves because that's the way they've been instilled. And that's something this Giants team has missed the last, 5-6 years, going back to Tom Coughlin. That toughness, that strength to fight through, persevere. That's something that's really going to be something to watch down the stretch here. And when you have a team that fights, when you have a team that has a next man up mentality, when you have a team that one guy believes in the next guy and they play and fight for each other and the coaching staff, that's a hard team to beat because teams like that usually don't beat themselves. And I look forward for the Giants down the stretch here to continue limiting turnovers, continue playing hard, stepping up on defense. Their run defense has to improve. Bottom 5 in run defense. That's something that cannot continue, especially as the weather starts to change here down the stretch. And the passing game needs to get a little bit better. You look at Daniel Jones' numbers for the season, and when you watch the games and you watch him, he has played well. He has managed the game, which is not a bad connotation. People want to put a bad connotation on game manager. He has managed games properly. He has made plays when he's been called upon. He's been playing tough. He's played hurt. He's played hard. He could run the football. Teams cannot stop Daniel Jones on the ground. They can contain him, but they cannot stop him. That 2-headed monster of Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley on the ground is what's gotten his Giants team to 6-2. So that's what I'm looking forward to down in the second half, and I think most Giants fans will be pleasantly surprised. Without further ado, let's get into some matchups for the game Sunday. First matchup is Saquon Barkley versus the Houston front seven. As mentioned earlier, Houston's run defense is just brutal, and Barkley has been on a tear. On paper, this looks like a straight slaughter between both of them, and it might just be because Barkley at home has run well. Barkley against poor rushing defenses has run well. Aside from the Seattle game, that was the one outlier, and it's gonna be a tough one for Houston because the Giants are getting healthier on the O line, and Barkley's been on fire. The other part of this is, and I put it out there that Houston has a run D that's been struggling, and a lot of people said, well, you said that about Seattle, and look what happened with Seattle. The key here is Daniel Jones and the passing offense, not just him, they have to play good enough to not allow Houston to stack the box 80-90% of the game. If you stack the box against the running back 80-90% of the game, most likely you're going to shut that running back down. It doesn't matter if it's Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Saquon Barkley, you're going to shut them down. So this passing offense, whether it's Wan'Dale Robinson, whether it's Kenny Golladay coming back, they have to open things up a little bit. Because if you're putting 8-9 guys in a box, doesn't matter how great your running back is, it's going to be tough. So that's what happened versus Seattle. The passing offense could not get it going. Seattle pinned their ears back. They stacked the box. They stopped Barkley on the ground. They stopped Jones on the ground. Obviously, Giants shot themselves in the foot with the 2 fumbles, but you have to be able to pass the football. Obviously, Bellinger being out again is going to be tough. He was developing into Jones' safety blanket. That's a big miss. He did come out this week. He had an interview. I still read, obviously. Still has a little bit of double vision. Had a plate inserted in his face. It's crazy that someone could actually be punched that hard in the face with a face mask on. But hopefully he'll get back down the line here for the Giants. But they're going to have to make do. And I'll touch on it more with my players to watch later in the show. But to me, this is the key to the game. Can Houston stop Saquon Barkley? And can the Giants' passing attack do enough to keep Houston honest so that they don't pin their ears back against Saquon Barkley? That's going to be big. And that leads to my next Giants matchup, DJ versus the Houston defense. Jones struggled against Seattle. He didn't play bad, but he did miss some throws. Definitely missing Bellinger so far this season. 6 touchdowns, 2 intercepts. He does have an 88 rating, 1,400 yards passing, 363 yards rushing, and 3 TDs. It's really been an interesting season for Jones because coming into the season, a lot of the talk was around, can he continue to limit the turnovers? Can he put the team in a position to win? Many, many times his win-loss record was brought up when discussing if he should be brought back, what kind of quarterback he is, and 6-2 now. So if you're going to take credit away from the quarterback for losing almost every game, give the quarterback credit when he's 6-2, because I'm seeing the opposite. I'm seeing people saying, well, it's Barkley, it's the opportunistic defense, it's coaching, it's the GM, it's everything but Jones. But you can't take credit away from him when the team plays poorly and not give him credit when they play well. That's bias. So give Jones his credit for that, and he has limited the turnovers. He has played smart, missing 3 of his starting receivers for the majority of the year has hurt him. Injuries on the offensive line have hurt him. And I've said this before on the show, people don't like to hear excuses for Jones, but these are reasons. These are actual functional reasons for him not having 15 passing touchdowns now and, 2,000 yards passing now. So I look forward to him against this Houston pass defense specifically. They have a solid pass defense. It's kind of in the middle of the pack. I think they can be had. Honestly, I don't see a lot of playmakers in the secondary other than maybe Jalen Petrie. Rookie has 2 intercepts already this season. Somebody I liked coming out in the draft. But I think Jones can have a big game, and I think he could have a big game on the ground as well. I think that's in the cards for him. And it's going to have to, because Giants don't have many other weapons other than him and Saquon Barkley. And for Barkley to really get going, Jones has to do his part. And you've seen the game the Giants have won. I mean, look at the Bears game. It was Barkley and it was Jones, and it was touchdown after touchdown. big run after big run, and that's when the Giants are at their best, when they could unleash that two-headed rushing monster of Jones and Barkley and go after a defense. That'll open up the passing lanes a little bit more. Run the RPOs, play actions, right? The quick slants the Giants like to do, the mini posts that they've done with Kenny Golladay in the past. It seemed like that's been the only successful route Golladay has run, has been the mini post. So they need to run the ball effectively, but they also need to pass the ball somewhat. They don't have to air it out of the yard, but it can't be dropping back and 2-3 yard completions and punting the ball, because it's not going to work. It didn't work versus Seattle. It didn't work versus Dallas. They had kind of a similar game plan versus Seattle and Dallas, where they would come out throwing it, throw the opposing defense off because they have a struggling secondary, but it just didn't work. So play to your strengths. I think DJ has his way with the Houston defense, probably more so on the ground than passing wise. But I think he has a big day. And I'm going to do one matchup for the Giants defense. And honestly, it's going to be Dameon Pierce. Like I said earlier in the show, the fourth round draft pick out of Florida has been phenomenal. Difficult to tackle. He can run outside. He can run inside. He's really a one-man wrecking crew for this Texans offense. And the Giants' run defense has not played well. And you look at the linebacker core, and you look at Tay Crowder, and you look at Jalen Smith, not played well this season. Whether it's using, the wrong leverage, whether it's going into the wrong holes, taking on, dipping and diving out of the way of blocks instead of taking them on and letting their guy behind them do work. They haven't done well, and they've allowed runs up the middle. They've allowed runs on the outside. Obviously the defensive ends on this Giants front have to be disciplined. Thibodeau, most likely going to get Zimenez back. Jahad Ward has done a solid job, holding his own on the edge. So it's going to be a team effort. If the Texans can get in there and start running on his Giants front, not good. You don't want to give Davis Mills any bit of an edge as he's been struggling. You don't want him looking at, stack boxes and being able to tee off passing. But I think it's going to be a huge challenge. I think Dameon Pierce could do some damage. He showed it last week. He had almost, I think it was like 170 yards rushing. He's a dynamic running back, and he's a rookie. He's young, and the Giants have been gashed. Whether it's Tony Pollard, whether it was Drake, from Baltimore, they've been gashed, and it's been brutal, and it's almost lost them some games. Their rushing attack has kept them in games, but their rushing defense has really, really hurt them in some games. So keep an eye on those three matchups, and let's do some players to watch. I'm going to go first, Giants, Kenny Golladay. And the reason I picked Kenny Golladay, and this is an interesting one because I've been very tough on Kenny Golladay for basically his entire tenure here. We all don't know the story. He was dynamic in Detroit. He had the hip surgery, and he came right to the Giants on a huge deal that Dave Gettleman gave him. And he's never really gotten in a groove. He had the sideline argument fight in his first year in Washington, and he's never really seemed to really get in a steady groove. This season, gets injured, was struggling before that. But looking at him in some of these interviews the last 3-4 weeks, seems like he wants to get in there and make a positive impact. I don't know how much athletically, physically he has left, honestly. Does seem to struggle to get open, and people will say, well, that's the type of receiver he is. That's the type of receiver he was. If Kenny Golladay struggled to get open in his prime, and now here he is 3 years later off a major hip surgery, that's a problem. And that's why he hasn't been able to do anything, because he's not getting open, and physically he's just not who he was. But he's been out 4 weeks. Seems like he has a positive attitude. The reason to me why he's the player to watch is there has to be a wide receiver on the outside other than Darius Slayton to take that coverage to the outside and let Wan'Dale Robinson feast in the middle. Let Wan'Dale Robinson run some drag, some quick slants, quick outs. Let him get open in space. But you got to take some of that pressure off on the outsides. And it can't be just Darius Slayton all the time because, let's be honest, coming into the season, he was the 5th wide receiver. So Giants need more support. If KG could make an impact, get open on the outsides, and open up that inside coverage-wise for Wan'Dale Robinson and the tight ends, I think that would have a huge effect on the Giants in this game. That would totally open things up for Barkley and Jones on the ground. And when you think about this Giants offense as a whole, it's had some good spots. It's had some highlights, but it really hasn't hit its stride or gotten to where it needs to be. And I think this is how it would look. You would want to get Jones and Barkley running. You would have Galladay and Slayton on the outside pushing coverage, and you would have Wan'Dale and tight ends feast over the middle. So KG is my player to watch, and Wan'Dale by byproduct. For the Texans, I'm going to go Jerry Hughes. 7 sacks this season. Jerry Hughes has played very well. Giants' offensive line, pass blocking-wise, has not been great. They have made some strides compared to years prior, though, but they have not been great. They've allowed a lot of sacks. I believe Jones has been pressured on about almost 38% of his dropbacks, which is a ridiculously high number. And Hughes has 7 sacks, and he's been able to get to the quarterback. He's been able to tee off. Keep an eye on him. That's someone you don't want to get loose in the backfield on the quarterback, especially from the blind side. They do like to move him around. But other than that, I don't see a lot on the Texans defense to fear. So those are my players to watch. Those are the matchups. Let's get into predictions. I'm going to go Giants 27, Texans 17. I think the Giants' rush offense is too much to handle for Houston in the end. And Houston doesn't have the horses to stop the Giants' rushing offense. I think Daniel Jones and the passing offense do just enough again. And the Giants get another victory while being the walking wounded, while getting more players back week after week. And what you want if you're a New York Giants fan or from whatever, a New York Giants player, coach, front office, is you want to hold the fort these next few games until you get Bellinger, Neal, and hopefully Aziz back. Those 3 players are critical to this push, this second half push. So you want to start quick Sunday. And number 1, you want to get off to a fast start and whoop the Texans' tail, because you don't want to start in the media where McKinney's injury has cast a dark cloud over the Giants. This is just like the boat trip. This is just like the Plaxico Burress shooting. You want to get out there Sunday afternoon, right off the bat, run the ball right up the middle, show them who's boss, enforce it, impose your will on the Texans' defensive line, and put the hurting on that team. The last thing the Giants need is to go and lose to a 1-6 football team, and then the media is going to start regurgitating the McKinney thing. Then if they lose the next game, it's going to get bigger and bigger. I mean, look at the boat picture. 6 years later, I still see the boat picture posted around on the media. So they're relentless. So for the New York Football Giants this Sunday versus the Texans, come out running the ball, play action, RPO, utilize Saquon Barkley early and often. Get Daniel Jones open in space on the edges to run. That's when he's at his best. Hopefully Galladay and Slayton can take some coverage to the outside so Wan'Dale Robinson could eat in the middle of the field, whatever it's digs, stop, drags, whatever it is. But that's how it should look for the Giants come Sunday. And if it does look that way, Giants go 7-2. That's it for today's show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As always, please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. We're getting close to 400 subscribers, which is pretty cool. And drop some comments. Don't forget, I want to hear your scores and your predictions for this Texans game in the comments, and we'll circle back. We'll have some fun. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Peace.